People who live in vacation destinations, Paris, the Bahamas, etc. What is the most irritating misconception about where you live? I live in Las Vegas. Listen, what happens in Vegas stays on the internet and also in the stories of every local who saw you do it. Don't do stupid crap. Not all of New York City is as crowded as the touristy areas. The vast majority of us aren't navigating through Times Square as part of our daily commutes, but mad sympathy to those who actually have to. You know what? I freaking hate walking up 7th every day, but I never really thought about the degree to which my commute is crappy until some stranger on the internet pulled it out of their butt as a specific example of a crappy commute. Tokyo here. I could name a few, but the one that always gets me is the misconception that people are going to accept, or even respond politely to, outrageous weebishness. If you roll up in Shibuya with a Naruto headband and a Hello Kitty backpack, trying to communicate through a handful of anime catchphrases while creepily leering at schoolgirls, people are rightly going to give you a wide berth. This made me laugh because I can totally imagine this is the equivalent of someone showing up in London with a TARDIS backpack expecting to walk straight into Doctor Who. I only lived there for a little while, but it's a common misconception that Hawaii is a great place to live. Don't get me wrong. It might be the most beautiful place on earth and there are many exceptional things about living there, but it's terribly expensive just to grocery shop, let alone try to buy a house. Many people just live with their parents and grandparents because no one can afford to move out, so many houses and apartments condos are bought as vacation properties, which drives up the price. Then, houses apartments in residential neighborhoods have a revolving door of vacationers coming in and out, which is disruptive to normal life. People on vacation care very little about how much noise they're making, etc. It's a catch-22 because so much of Hawaii's money comes from tourism. But tourism is making it impossible for locals to buy homes. I live in California. Non-Californians be like, oh wow, I love all the palm trees and the beaches. You are so lucky. I live in the middle of a desert. Nothing but dirt, Joshua trees, 70 miles per hour winds, and sagebrush. The beaches are fabulous, but anywhere north of Santa Barbara no one gets into the water without a wetsuit. I live in Las Vegas. People are occasionally shocked when they hear I work at a school. I've been told several times, I didn't even think Vegas had schools. Australia is big, varied, and safe. There are dangers here, but your biggest risk is yourself. Just read the signs, not a metaphor. There's signs about every danger everywhere, and use common sense. Honestly, I've seen Americans and Canadians, who have been near freaking grizzlies, freak out over a lizard. Just relax man, it's nice here. Another misconception relates to kangaroos. Foreigners assume that we revere them as a national icon, have them as pets or put them in zoos. Well, yes, you can find kangaroos in wildlife sanctuaries, but there's also 50 million of them and they compete with livestock. They're big and stupid and have a habit of totaling cars on highways. We also eat them. I lived in Amsterdam for 5 years. I realized pretty quick for the rest of my life saying you lived in Amsterdam means people assume you're really into weed, illicit drugs, crazy parties, prostitutes, or a combination of all that. In actuality, most of my going out was for drinks with colleagues. I don't like pot, and only ever went to the red light district when someone visiting me was curious enough to see it. Also, Dutch people who are into weed generally don't love Amsterdam coffee shops. They're full of tourists and overpriced. They're only great if you're the sort of person that likes to talk to strangers or something. Los Angeles, specifically Hollywood. Literally everything about it is underwhelming. The Walk of Fame is cool for 2 seconds. Grauman's Chinese theater is smaller than you'd think. The Hollywood sign is just a big ass sign. And no, you're not going to run into a celebrities walking around. All the while it's incredibly crowded, smells terrible, and you have to dodge costumed street performers in droves. I came to say this about Hollywood also. Aggressive street performers, souvenir shops, urine. However, there are lots of great things about LA, just not the things people think. Alaska. Where to begin? It's not always dark. In fact, in the summer it's quite light, hence some difficulty viewing northern lights in summer months. Ditto cold, we do have summer. In Fairbanks we regularly hit 80 degrees in the summer, sometimes hotter, but also our state is huge. So what's true of Fairbanks isn't necessarily true of Anchorage or Juneau. In fact, Southeast, Juneau, Ketchikan, etc., the cruise ship circuit, is almost like a separate state. They're more like Seattle than the rest of AK. People don't ride around all day on dog sleds. We don't live in igloos. We are Americans. Our indigenous cultures are diverse and are not all Eskimo. Oh, and most of us can't see Russia from our backyards. Australian here, Sydney and stuff are expensive. But the one thing that people underestimate about our country is the sheer size of it. People go to the hotspots like Uluru, GBR, Sydney and Melbourne, but they forget that it is a country nearly the size of USA. It's not small and you will meet people who have never left their state before. I used to work in a tourist center in a super small town way out in a pretty rural area. The amount of tourists who would come from overseas and decide they wanted to do the Nilaba or just a day trip out to the desert with no planning or information was ludicrous. If you get stuck or your car breaks down, there is nobody around to help you for hours and no phone signal. I lived in Hawaii for many years. You wouldn't believe how many people legitimately think everyone in Hawaii lives in grass huts or who are shocked to find out everyone there speaks English or don't know Hawaii is part of the United States, including quite a lot of Americans. I'm Native American and worked as a tour guide in Banff, Alberta, and I was appalled at how many people think Indians still live in teepees. I was also accused too many times of being a fake Indian that the park was trying to pass off because I'm light-skinned and had short curly hair, and had legit arguments with people over that. Hated that job. Dubai. That just because people have expensive cars doesn't mean they can drive them well, at all. Dubai resident also. Been here 14 years and the worst driving seems to be people in a Nissan Patrol. We're not all beaches, crazy people and old people. Florida. I lived in Miami. Most people probably think of the beaches, or maybe the nightlife in the South Beach or Brickell area, but in reality, most people live far from the beach, in far less glamorous locations. Most of Miami is those one-story stucco houses with Spanish tile, painted some ridiculous color or tan, with a small yard and 1-2 palm trees. Bahamas. What's funny is when people come to the main island and are surprised to find out that the entire place isn't a clean, beautiful, sandy tropical island no matter where you go. It's also funny when they find out the murder rate, which is high in comparison to the size and population. Other popular misconceptions by people who know nothing about us are that we are, and I have seriously heard every last one of these, loincloth wearing savages that fish all day, drink out of coconuts, and live straw houses, and sleep in hammocks. That does however perfectly describe the native people who were killed off by the Spanish hundreds of years ago soon after the Western world was discovered. Someone once seriously asked me, "Do you guys ride dolphins or are they just friends?" My response, "They are our main form of transportation as decreed by King Aquaman. Long live the king." Not from the Bahamas but traveled extensively there, and it seems the farther you get from Nassau, the better. Unfortunately it seems most visitors only see Atlantis Resort and not much else. When I tell people I live in New York, they think I live in a penthouse overlooking Central Park. Let me be clear, there's much more this state has to offer. All of the tourists say, "Wow, everybody is so friendly here." The truth is we like you being here, but we like you a lot more when you leave. They think everyone is friendly on vacation, because once the plane landed they dislodged the stick from their own anus. Funny how everyone else seems nicer when you yourself start being nicer. New Zealand here. It's sold as a clean green eco country where there are views out every window and you can roam along the empty tracks and beaches to your heart's delight. The reality is a lot different. The country is going through an eco crisis. Water quality in most rivers has dropped to the point where they are not swimmable. Old school sewerage overflows are contaminating the beaches and every track of international note is shuffling room only. While there is still stunning scenery, the rest of the country is struggling to keep up with an influx of people alongside a housing crisis that's made home ownership a pipe dream for many. Tourists often think that, being such a small country, they can drive from AB in X hours as that's what it would take back home for that distance. The reality is that the majority of our roads highways are single lanes on winding roads with one-way bridges and few chances to overtake. The drivers suck and you will cop a gesture or two if you dare look at another driver. For the most part people are nice and friendly, but it's like every other developed country. Leave something of value in your car and it'll get nicked. Walk down a dark street at night and some p-head will try one over on you. Flash a bit of coin and someone will figure out a way to party with it. New Zealand's a great country, but it is a heavily developed country which comes with all the associated problems. It's a long time since it's been 100% pure. I don't live there, but a lot of my family does and I've been there. Jamaica. It's a paradise. No, it isn't. A lot of people can't afford food, water, and electricity at the same time. Apparently electricity used to be cheaper, but since the government is a total butthole they sold it to some company and now it's expensive. Probably not a misconception because it's sadly one of the things we are known for, especially if you live in the UK. Crime. Our crimes are pretty bad. Not as bad as Latin America, but it's still bad. And our job market isn't exactly helping its case. It's pretty bad. And the MLMS also are not helping. Do keep in mind that some places are safer than others, like Port Antonio. The people here are nice. Well, yes, but actually no. We tend to be vain and general buttholes to other Jamaicans. We will treat tourists nicely if you're a tourist because you're basically one of the few things that fuel our economy. And don't come if you're gay. They won't mind killing you and your spouse for being bad to the Bible or some crap. The country is nice, but we could really use a do-over. Lived in Amsterdam for 4 years. Everyone assumes I smoked hella weed. Great freaking city overall. Great size and very calm, with very friendly people. Another downside was I looked like a midget amongst all the giants, being 5 feet 5 inches. I'm in Chicago. Despite its reputation for gang violence, tourism is surprisingly strong. All the places tourists go are mostly safe. Having lived in Chicago for over 2 years, the only times I hear about people getting shot in just about anywhere involve drug deals. The rest is in areas with gang violence. Gangs tend to be hyper-local for the most part after all. So if you're worried about getting shot in Chicago, don't be a dong to your drug dealer, I guess. I live in a touristy part of Wales and would like this cleared up. We don't all suddenly switch to speaking Welsh when an English tourist arrives. There are genuinely people that believe as soon as an English person enters a pub, say, that all the Welsh people who were previously speaking English suddenly switch. I live in Munich. We just had Oktoberfest. The most aromatic of all events. Vomit. Urine. Mostly vomit. Oktoberfest is a caricature of itself by now. I'm from Hawaii. People live here, full time and not in grass huts. The poverty back home is terrible, drugs are rampant, and our beaches are being destroyed by foreigners, including mainlanders, that don't respect our land. Yet, I moonlight working in an industry that is pretty tourist centered, because that's what brings in money. It's a vicious cycle. I lived Liverpool for a long time. American tourists in particular used to be amazed that not everyone was obsessed with the Beatles. That New Yorkers are rude. We can be totally, but it's because you mess up the flow of the rest of us who need to get somewhere. If you get lost, a New Yorker will jump at the chance to help. Need a photo taken for your vacation, someone will take the snapshot. Tip: if you are sightseeing, move to the side and not in the middle of a sidewalk, and never stand more than 2 people wide, unless you got a small child. I went to NY a couple years ago, and I was trying to figure out which stop to get off the subway at, and I asked the person next to me, and within seconds everyone in the car was jumping to help, and debating which stop was better. It was awesome. The first thing people do when I tell them this story is express disbelief. I grew up on the Jersey Shore near Seaside Heights. I hate that people think we are like the dingbats who come to visit. They are all from NY and North Jersey. Locals are not tanning bed fried vagaholics. Alaska. That it's dark nearly 24 hours a day all year. New Orleans here for tourists. The city always seems to stop and start in the French Quarter. There really is so much more to see and do. No, in Hawaii we do not communicate purely by aloha and mahalo. Yeah, gotta throw in a shaka every once in a while. Tourist, which way's the Parthenon? Me. Go to that side of the piazza, keep on walking, and you'll get to it in about 800 miles. Another tourist, where's the Palpatine Hill? Me. I think it's near the Senate building on Coruscant. Leprechauns. Leprechaun here, can confirm. I used to live in Puerto Rico. No, not everything is just life on the beach and having a good time. And contrary to what many people, the beautiful and picturesque sights that you often see in photos are specifically taken to attract tourists, so not everything in the island looks like that. Tokyo. It's not the perfect paradise people imagine it to be. It's a major city, just like London, New York, Toronto, etc., and has major city problems. The trains run at 130% capacity, garbage and graffiti almost everywhere, rats, cockroaches, feral cats, and attack crows. No robots just yet, roam the city. The homeless population just get shunted around or thrown in jail. Little support for them. Grew up in SoCal area, Norcal, SF area, and spent 5 years plus on Oahu. La in SF is crowded AF, obviously. The tourist traps of downtown La isn't all that great. The Walk of Fame is good for a second, and that's about it. The Gorman's Chinese Theater, TCL, isn't all that big. The Hollywood sign is a pain in the butt to get to and isn't worth the drive traffic. SF. Fisherman's Wharf is highly priced seafood you can literally buy if you travel 5 miles away. The Golden Gate Bridge is just a bridge. Lombard Street is just a street. Dolores Park is filled with hippies and homeless people, including Mission District. Downtown is filled with traffic, homeless, and smells of uniqueness. Oahu, the "you're so lucky you live in Hawaii" from friends and family gets tiresome. When they visit, you have to pay to a guide. It gets rather expensive. Driving down to Honolulu Waikiki area is a pain due to traffic and the amount of overly priced parking spots, unless you're military. Woo for the Halekoa. A lot of tourists that visit have limited English and don't follow rules about littering in the ocean, staying off the coral reefs. The amount of people that try to do the Stairway to Heaven hike is stupid as most get injured. Same goes with the very touristy hike of Diamond Head. A lot of tourists get heat stroke due to the elevation and humidity. Yes, living on Oahu was great, but the thing they don't tell you, flying cockroaches and centipede. Those fricking centipedes. You didn't lose me until centipedes. Scotland is seen as a wild and untamed land. In reality, our hills have been burned for grouse or grazed into oblivion by sheep and deer after all of our large native predators were hunted to extinction. A lot of those iconic barren hills used to have actual scrub and plant life on them. Livestock farming and hunting have ruined our countryside. A report came out the other day that also states that wildlife is declining faster in Scotland than anywhere else in the UK. The people want change, particularly doing away with the big estates causing a lot of the destruction. But money talks like anywhere else. I still love my country with all my heart, which is why it is incredibly difficult to watch it being destroyed. We lived on the beach in San Diego for years and apparently everyone who comes to visit thinks we like to party 24/7, especially the Airbnb next door to us. We would ask nicely the day before to please knock off at 3 AM, but often they would party till 5 and there's no reasoning with drunk young people. Since we woke up and left by 7:30 AM, we would put on a YouTube video titled 12 Hours of a Crying Baby and turn up the stereo and let it play the 5 or so hours we'd be away. It certainly opened the channels of dialogue and respect from there on out. I used to think that Floridians were the worst drivers in the world, but since living here I've discovered that it's actually New Englanders who live in Florida half time and get Florida tags on their 5th car for tax reasons who are the crappy drivers. Boston. If you're expecting everyone to talk like a Ben Affleck movie, you'll be sorely disappointed. Also, all caps for those in the back. Harvard Yard is a pedestrian only area. Shut the frick up about leaving motor vehicles there. No, a single person calls this place Beantown. None. Zero. Zip. Nada. Now the Bean Pit. That's some good local crap and you should totally go if you're in town in February. You have been visited by the gentle doggo. Subscribe to that dude and he will help you by lowering your stress. Thanks for watching. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video, or don't. Either way, have a great day you magnificent people.